They say the stars themselves scream within the warp, that beyond the veil of mortal reason lies a sea of madness, howling for blood, worship, and despair. In that sea, a single ripple can drown worlds. Yet somewhere, far from the Astronomican's fading glow, something entered this reality that did not belong. No ship, no signature, no birth's cream in the image, just impact, raw, absolute, silent. The augurs of a dying Imperial frigate caught it first, an object moving faster than comprehension, glowing with neither plasma nor faith. When it struck the ash wastes of a forgotten planet, it did not leave a crater, it erased one. The machine spirits wailed in confusion. The astropaths spoke of a light that was not light, a form that broke the laws even the warp obeyed. And for one fleeting moment, even demons paused their laughter, because something impossible had arrived, something that feared nothing, and had never known despair. If you can still hear this vox signal through the static and ruin, hold fast. There are stories worth remembering, even at the edge of damnation. If the Emperor wills it, let this one spread like a flicker of hope, or a warning to the cosmos itself. So, if this tale finds you, citizen of the Imperium or wanderer of the void, bear witness and share it beyond your own echo. Subscribe to the remembrance, like the act of sealing your soul to a record the warp cannot erase. Let this voice be heard before silence claims it. The world was dead long before the stranger fell upon it. Desolation X had once been a loyal mining outpost of the Segmentum Obscurus, a world that fed the Imperium's endless hunger for promethium and ore. Now it was little more than a scar beneath a blood-colored sky. The air itself tasted like rust, thick with the scent of burnt oil and coagulated fear. The manufactorums stood silent, their smokestacks coughing only ash and the slow. Mechanical sobs of forgotten servitors still bound to their tasks. Those who had survived the chaos invasion had done so only by hiding beneath the ruins, praying to the Emperor through cracked Vox receivers that never answered. The sky shimmered with storms, not born of weather but of the warp itself, lightning that screamed, clouds that bled. And then something fell through it. No warning. No drop pods, no re-entry flames, just a flasher streak of white that split the horizon like a blade of light, striking the wasteland beyond the last functioning hab block. The Auspex arrays of a retreating skittery patrol caught it first, their data feeds stuttering as their machine spirits hissed in panic. The tech priest overseeing the unit whispered binary canticles to calm his systems. Yet even his faith in the Omnissiah trembled. The object was no meteor. Its descent carried no warp signature, no heat bloom, no logical telemetry at all. It was as if reality itself had simply permitted an exception. The first to arrive were Guardsman what remained of the 908th Cadian Regiment. They approached the impact site with lasguns drawn, boots sinking into the soft sludge of the poisoned soil. There was no crater, just a circle of glassed earth, perfect and smooth, as though the world had been pressed flat by an invisible hand. And at its center stood a man, bald, barehanded, clad in a yellow garment, far too thin for the cold wind tearing through the wastes. His cape fluttered lazily behind him, unstained by ash or filth. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He just looked at them with a calm, almost apologetic expression, as though he'd wandered into the wrong place entirely. Sergeant Merrick ordered him to identify himself, his voice cracking through the Vox grill. No response. The man blinked once, tilted his head, and asked, "You guys know where I am?" His voice was clear, human but carried no fear, just confusion. The guardsmen exchanged glances. Some muttered oaths to the Emperor, others tightened their grips on their rifles. When Merrick barked again, the stranger merely smiled, an odd, small smile that looked absurd against the backdrop of burning sky. A shot rang out, then another. Lost beam struck his chest, leaving not so much as a scorch mark. He looked down, brushed at the fabric, and sighed softly. "Guess that answers my question," he murmured. The next moment was too fast to register. The squad found themselves thrown backward by a shockwave that carried no heat, no sound, just force. The world quivered. The ash drifted sideways, and when they blinked, the man stood where he had before, except the ruined manufactorum behind them now had a neat, circular hole cleaned through its center stone, steel and demon flesh alike erased. The guardsmen's hearts pounded against their armor. One of them whispered a prayer, another dropped to his knees. The stranger looked around, scratching his cheek like a man wondering how to apologize for breaking someone's wall. Above them, the storm shrieked louder. The warp had noticed. The warp storm pulsed like a wounded heart above the wastes, its veins of violet lightning tearing through clouds that had forgotten the sun. Vox traffic across desolation, Ix erupted in a frenzy, half-formed prayers, shrieking warnings, and the desperate binary of tech priests who could no longer rationalize what their senses told them. The Mechanicus had a word for it, unquantifiable. An insult to the Omnissiah's order. Even as the skittery patrol regrouped near the site, their augurs failed again and again, data collapsing into static. The air trembled with something deeper than sound, like reality itself, groaning under strain. Sergeant Merrick staggered to his feet, helm cracked, his mind reeling. The stranger stood unscathed amid the distortion, utterly unbothered by the storm or the heat rising from the ground. When Merrick tried to speak again, his words were swallowed by a low hum, a vibration that made his teeth ache. It was the kind of sound the warp made when it smelled a challenge. Then came the scent, sweet and rotten, the signature of demonic intrusion. Out of the swirling ash, forms began to crawl. First shadows, then limb-twisted bodies of the neverborn, drawn to the disturbance like carrion to blood. They oozed from the cracks in the glassed soil, howling in voices that made reality shiver. The guardsmen panicked, forming a loose firing line as their lasguns spat red fury into the haze. Bolts of light tore through the first wave of horrors, disintegrating them into vapor. But for every demon slain, two more emerged, their laughter mixing with the static hum of the storm. The stranger only watched. His eyes followed the chaos with a calm detachment, as though the whole event bored him. One demona, towering, armor-plated thing with a mouth that split its torso, lunged straight for him, claws dripping with the blood of unreality. The man didn't even shift his stance. The demon's charge met a single punch, casual, almost lazy, and the result was catastrophic. The creature didn't fall, it didn't bleed, it simply ceased to exist, not vaporized, not banished, erased. The void left behind closed with a sound like a sigh. The guardsmen froze. Even the demons hesitated, their animal cunning recognizing something unnatural. The stranger tilted his head, flexed his gloved fingers, and muttered, "That was something." Then he vanished. No warp flash, no step, just absence, followed by presence as he appeared in front of another demon, delivering another impossibly swift strike. The land convulsed each time he moved, like the planet itself was unprepared for such disregard of physics. Magos, Irathis. orbiting above in the Mechanicus monitoring craft Canticle of Iron, watched the readings in silence. His augurs reported gravitational oscillation without mass displacement, kinetic force without energy loss. His metallic fingers tightened around a data. "This violates," he whispered in Binha. The servitors around him twitched, unable to process the impossible. He magnified the visual feed, locking on to the bald human-like figure whose punches distorted the atmosphere itself. Unarmored, organic, and yet he paused, his remaining flesh quivering. This being carries entropy in restraint. On the surface, the guardsman realized the battle was already over. The storm was thinning, demons retreating like smoke caught in wind. The stranger stood alone among silence, cape fluttering softly as ash began to settle. He looked at his own fist, then at the cowering soldiers, and sighed. "Guess I overdid it again." For the first time in centuries, Desolation X was quiet. The warp recoiled, wounded by something that was not faith, nor weapon, nor God. The Imperium's endless nightmare had just met something that didn't dream at all. The silence that followed was wrong. It wasn't peace. It was absence. Even the distant machine spirits seemed muted, as if the world itself held its breath, unwilling to draw attention back to what it had just witnessed. The guardsmen stood frozen, the echoes of their own heartbeats loud inside their helmets. The stranger, meanwhile, appeared entirely indifferent to the apocalyptic calm surrounding him. He turned his gaze upward, eyes narrowing as if studying the wounded sky, then frowned slightly. "This place is kind of depressing," he murmured, voice carried away by the ashen wind. Sergeant Merrick finally broke the stillness. He took one step forward, lasgun trembling in his grip. "Identify yourself. Are you Imperial? What unit, what world do you serve?" The words were half demand, half plea. The stranger blinked, scratching the back of his head, then replied with a casual honesty that made Merrick's blood run cold. "I'm just a hero for fun." The phrase meant nothing in Low Gothic. The Vox systems translated it poorly, some strange distortion that the tech priest accompanying them later described as semantic corruption. But to the guardsmen, the message was clear enough. This man was no sanctioned warrior, no soldier of the Emperor. A few of them took involuntary steps backward. The stranger tilted his head. "You guys don't look too good," he said, his tone friendly, almost sympathetic. "You should probably get somewhere safe. These monsters were kind of weak." That last word sent ripples of unease through the squad. Weak. The demons that had devoured whole battalions of guardsmen. Shattered fortifications, and broken faith itself weak. Merrick's hand clenched tighter around his weapon. "Those were the Neverborn," he hissed. "Spawn of the warp. No man calls them weak." The stranger seemed confused by the anger. "Well, they weren't that tough. I didn't even really try." His words were not arrogance, they carried no pride, no mockery. Just fact, stated with the simplicity of someone for whom effort was a rare commodity. It was that tone, more than anything, that unnerved them. Before Merrick could respond, the Vox in his helm crackled. "This is Margos Arathus, of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Identify all life signs near the impact locus. By order of the Omnissiah, no biological entity is to be engaged until assessment." The Magos's voice was layered with metallic filters and the cold certainty of command. The guardsman stiffened immediately. The stranger, however, seemed to lose interest halfway through the message. He sighed, glanced around, and asked, "Is there a city around here? Or maybe a store?" The vox hissed again. Repeat. Stand by for containment. A beam of red light lanced down from the clouds, wrapping the stranger in a column of scanning energy. It flickered, trying to read what was clearly unreadable. The Mechanicus vessel above struggled to identify molecular composition, energy output, anything measurable. Every result returned null. Frustration leaked into Erathas's modulated voice. Machine spirits report absence of data integrity. No genetic match found. Probability of human origin possible. Down below, the stranger rubbed his temple. Man, this is getting annoying. The beam intensified. The air hummed with tension. The guardsman braced for the Emperor knew what, but the man simply stepped forward, and the beam shattered like glass. The sky rippled as the scanning matrix collapsed, and for a moment the entire Mechanicus ship stuttered mid-orbit, its reactors flickering. Magos Erathas stared into the void of his flickering data feed. Impossible, he whispered. On the surface, the bold stranger just sighed. Guess I'll walk, then. He turned, stepping toward the distant lights of a dying manufactorum, completely unaware that he had just broken the laws of the Imperium's universe without even noticing. In the hours that followed the event on Desolation, as the skies above the world flickered with the cold light of Imperial ships descending. The clouds glowed red from the heat of re-entry, casting jagged shadows across the wasteland. The survivors who had worshipped the bald stranger as a saint were herded by Skiterian forces into containment zones. Servitors dragged data cables through the ash, feeding endless streams of corrupted telemetry to the orbiting vessel Canticle of Iron. To the Adeptus Mechanicus, this was not a miracle. It was a specimen. Magos Erathas had not left his command dais in 13 hours. The feed displayed the anomalies, every motion, the man's heart rate steady, his heat signature non-existent, his presence radiating nothing measurable yet undeniably real. Every machine that scanned him returned contradiction. Flesh without energy, mass without density, function without fuel. It violates every catechism, Erathas whispered through his vox. The words tasted like heresy even in the mechanical cadence of his speech. A human without limitation is an insult to the Omnissiah's perfect design. The man himself stood in the ruins, calmly eating what passed for flavorless protein bricks handed to him by terrified guardsmen. He chewed thoughtfully, staring at the endless horizon of metal wreckage. You guys really eat this stuff every day? He asked, tone neutral, almost polite. The guardsmen didn't answer. They didn't dare. His strength had become a myth overnight, spreading through Vox channels faster than sensors could suppress it. Whole regiments were whispering that the Emperor had sent a new weapon. Others claimed he was a Xeno experiment that escaped the black ships. The truth was simpler and infinitely stranger. He was just trying to find a way home. Above, Erathas initiated the next stage of his study. Deploy containment team, Thatis. No lethal ordnance. Subject must remain intact. The Mechanicus expedition descended in a storm of red light and iron prayer. Skittery rangers marched through the dust, chanting in Binharic hymns, their optics glimmering like dead suns. At their center strode Erathas himself, encased in a frame of polished steel and ancient wisdom. His many limbs clicked and whirred, each servo blessed with holy oils. Identify yourself, he intoned upon reaching the figure in yellow. By order of the Omnissiah, you are to submit to analysis and sanctified disassembly. The man blinked, confused. Disassembly, he repeated, That doesn't sound good. Arathas's voice remained level. Your composition defies logic. Your existence undermines the Mechanicus creed. You will yield your structure to the machine guard's scrutiny. The stranger sighed. Yeah, I'm gonna have to say no to that. The Margos signaled. In an instant, the air filled with the hum of plasma weaponry. Skittery raised their rifles, firing synchronized volleys. The beams lanced through the haze and vanished. The energy dispersed before reaching the target, as if space itself refused to cooperate. Arathas's optics flared. Impossible, he muttered. No known shield technology. The man appeared beside him, faster than the human eye could register. He tapped lightly on the Magos's metal shoulder. You're kind of overreacting. The gesture was gentle, almost friendly, yet it sent a tremor through Arathas's entire frame. His sensors screamed overload. Every servo froze, every subroutine collapsed. To the Skittery, it looked as though their master had been touched by divine wrath. The stranger stepped back, awkwardly scratching his head. Sorry, didn't mean to break your robot suit thing. Above them, the canticle of iron recorded another data spike that defied categorization. Somewhere within its sanctum, a servitor whispered an unbidden phrase into the data stream. Flesh has no limit. The machine god did not answer. Margos Arathas's body slumped under the weight of malfunction. His vox grill sputtered with bursts of static and binheric screams as his internal systems struggled to restart. Sparks danced across his augmentic limbs, casting brief flashes of blue across the ash. Skittery scrambled to his side, chanting desperate machine prayers, their voices a mix of fear and awe. They had seen their master face plasma storms, warp entities, even xenoconstructs, but never had he been undone by a touch. To them, it was no mere contact. It was an act of godhood. The stranger, unaware of the sanctity he had just shattered, crouched beside the fallen Magos and gave him a small, awkward pat on the shoulder. You okay, old guy? I didn't hit that hard. The nearest Skittery raised his galvanic rifle, hands shaking. The impulse to fire clashed with the terror of offending whatever this being was. No human moved like that. No human caused the air itself to hum just by standing still. Through sheer will and a chorus of chanting saboteurs, Arathas rebooted. His optic lenses flared back to life, a wash of crimson light sweeping across the stranger's calm face. Your interference is irreconcilable, he hissed, voice glitching with residual static. You are a breach in order, a paradox. The man tilted his head, frowning. I'm just standing here. To stand in defiance of logic is defiance of the omniscient Arathas spat. You are neither flesh nor machine. You are blasphemy embodied. He tried to rise, but his limbs shook beneath him. The stranger extended a hand, offering help without hesitation. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, Arathas's trembling metal fingers gripped that living hand. The Margos expected heat, radiation, something measurable, but he felt only warmth. Ordinary human warmth. His systems stuttered again, unable to reconcile it. Are human? Arathas whispered, as if saying the word might collapse the universe. Yeah, came the casual reply. I think so. The Magos' mechadendrites twitched. Then humanity has changed beyond comprehension. Before more could be said, the Voxnet erupted in chaos. Imperial Guard frequencies screamed with overlapping voices, reports of warp breaches, sudden demonic manifestations, near the northern manufacturing zones. Arathis froze, his machine logic instinctively shifting toward tactical calculation. The stranger glanced up at the storm-dark horizon, eyes narrowing. "They're back?" he asked quietly. The Mogos didn't answer. Already, Skittery were repositioning, forming firing lines. From the rolling dust came the first echoes of laughter, warped, gleeful, cruel. The demons had returned, drawn once again by the impossible light of the anomaly. Arathis watched his scanners flare with readings beyond comprehension. "They are converging on you," he said, realization cutting through his disbelief. "You are the beacon." The man looked almost apologetic. "Yeah, that happens sometimes." The ground split open as the first waves surged forth, beasts of shadow and brass, their forms burning with the fury of the warp. The Skittery opened fire, their mechanical precision carving through the first ranks, but it was like firing into a hurricane. The demons advanced, laughter turning to roars, the air thickening with psychic pressure. The stranger exhaled softly, flexed his fist, and stepped forward. "Guess it's my turn again." His movement blurred, a single punch cutting through the shrieking mob. The explosion of kinetic force turned the battlefield silent for one impossible second. Demons vanished, banished, not slain, erased from the warp's memory. The very air seemed cleaner where they'd been. Behind him, Margos Arathis stared, unblinking. "He unmade the immaterial," he whispered. "He destroys that which cannot die." For the first time in his mechanized life, the Margos felt something his augmetics could not process. Faith. The storm above desolation raged harder than ever, its violet fire stretching like veins across the blood-red sky. The warp's fury should have shattered the planet, yet something was holding it back. Every time the bald stranger struck, the storm recoiled, folding inward, retreating as though ashamed. The demons screamed in confusion, their voices breaking into static shrieks as their essence was erased, not exorcised. The ground quaked under each impact. But there was no destruction, only silence, clean, absolute. Unnatural silence, from a ridge overlooking the chaos. The remaining guardsmen watched through fractured lenses. One of them fell to his knees, whispering a prayer that no priest had ever taught. "He fights without faith," the man breathed, "yet the warp fears him." His comrade crossed himself instinctively, though he wasn't sure to whom anymore. Below them, their supposed savior was just a blur of movement, one man against the unending tide, moving with the indifference of someone swatting flies within the storm. Mogos Arathis recorded everything, each flicker of light and motion feeding into his cranial archive. No known frequency matches, no psychic resonance, no biological strain, he muttered through clenched voxfield. His mechanical mind raced, desperate to place this phenomenon within the sacred logic of Mars. But each data point only unraveled another layer of impossibility. "If this is human," he whispered, "then humanity has transcended the Omnissiah himself, a demon of immense stature." Wings spanning the horizon rose from the Asher-grated demon of Khorne, its armor dripping molten rage. It roared a name in a language that made the vox grills crackle and burst. The stranger didn't flinch. He simply looked up, expression mildly irritated. The creature lunged, hammer descending with enough force to sunder a titan. The man's response was a single punch, almost lazy. The hammer shattered like glass. The demon froze mid-swing, realization dawning too late. Before its body collapsed into nothing, no scream, no fire, only absence. Arathis's senses shorted out completely. No energy discharge detected. No dimensional backlash. It simply ceased. The Margos turned, addressing no one. He deletes creation. This cannot be. When the dust settled, the battlefield was empty. No warp residue, no corpses, no evidence that anything had existed there. Only the stranger remained, standing beneath a sky that had finally begun to clear. The storms parted above him, revealing a glimpse of stars. He looked up, squinting slightly, as though trying to find something familiar. "Still not home," he murmured. The skittery formed a perimeter around him, weapons lowered. None dared approach, but all of them stared with reverent dread. To them, this man was no longer anomaly or threat. He was something closer to an unspoken truth, a force that existed beyond creed. The Mechanicus would call him blasphemy. The Ecclesiarchy would call him miracle. The Astra Militarum would call him weapon. But to those who had seen him fight, he was something simpler, an ending. Irithyus approached again, supported by two soldiers. His mechanical voice quavered with what might have been awe. "If you are man," he said softly, "then perhaps the Emperor was not unique." The stranger glanced back, puzzled. "The Emperor, a god among men," Irithyus replied, voice almost reverent. "Our eternal ruler, the one whose will sustains humanity." The man frowned slightly. "Sounds like a lot of responsibility." Irithyus stared into the calm face of something that had just undone a demon legion and felt a chill deeper than any void. "And you bear none of it," he said. The stranger shrugged. "Never really liked jobs." Above them, the first rays of sunlight broke through the dust clouds. Desolation X was quiet again, but the Imperium was already moving. Word of the anomaly had reached Terra. The Custodes had been informed, and somewhere, deep within the Golden Palace, a single servo skull paused mid-fleetus, though something in the Emperor's silent dream had stirred. The reports spread through the Imperium faster than any sanctioned transmission should have allowed. From the Mechanicus forges of Mars to the inquisitorial crypts of Terra, whispers bloomed like contagion. A nameless man had appeared on a dead world and erased a demonic host with his fists. No warp flare, no psychic echo, no relic invoked, just strength. The administratum redacted every mention, of course, but the data leaked through corrupted vox lines and dying astropaths who dreamed of a blinding light in the shape of a man. The Ecclesiarchy called it blasphemy. The Inquisition called it contamination. The common soldiers called it hope. By the time the Imperium's sanction arrived, Desolation X had become a pilgrimage site wrapped in barbed wire and faith. Thousands of refugees trudged through the ash, seeking fragments of the ground where he'd stood. They knelt before the glassed crater, whispering that the Emperor had sent his new hand. Priests screamed denial, even as their own hearts trembled. It didn't matter what the hierarch's thought belief had found its own path in orbit. Magos Irithyus watched the growing hysteria with unease. "Faith without understanding is entropy," he muttered through his vox. He had sealed all data from his earlier encounter, purging every recording that could reveal the truth. But even he could not hide the terror that crept into his logic. The more he studied the readings, the less sense they made. The stranger was not warp-born, nor mechanical, nor divine in any measurable sense. He simply was. And that, to the Mechanicus, was the most dangerous classification of all. The stranger himself had not left the surface. He wandered the barren wastes in silence, leaving footprints that didn't fill with dust. The survivors followed him from afar, forming a growing procession of believers. He tried to ignore them, tried to find quiet, but even in his simplicity, he could feel the pressure mounting. "I just wanted a normal day," he muttered once, sitting atop the broken shell of a transport tank, staring at the red horizon. "Why does it always end up like this?" The warp answered him. Reality convulsed. Across the northern hemisphere of desolation, every machine spirit screamed in unison. Vox channels exploded into distortion. The sky ruptured. Not a storm this time, something worse. The very fabric of the materium split, bleeding light that wasn't light. From that wound poured an army of impossible things, demons, warp echoes, things that defied names. They had not come for conquest. They had come for him. The stranger rose slowly, brushing ash from his shoulder. His expression was calm, but something in his eyes had changed, an echo of fatigue, maybe, or disappointment. Again. He sighed. The demonic host moved like a tidal wave, reality bending beneath their march. Every nightmare the warp had ever conceived found form-horned titans, slithering shadows, sentient storms that devoured the sound of their own screams. Their arrival shattered the already ruined manufactorums, twisting the steel into obscene geometries. The air grew thick with hate. Somewhere in orbit, a custodian guard, golden armor gleaming like a dying sun, watched through the Auspex feed. His voice was solemn. "So this is the anomaly." Erathis' mechanical tone replied through the Voxlink. "He has no designation, no classification, and no origin. But the warp fears him." The custodian's eyes narrowed. "Then he is not anomaly. He is threat." Below, the stranger cracked his knuckles and whispered to himself, "Guess I'll clean up again." The warp trembled, and the battle for reality began. The warp descended in full. The sky tore open like a wound, and through it poured the filth of unreality. Rivers of liquid shadow spilled over the horizon, and from their depths rose entities that defied every law of existence. Towers of flesh and hatred stretched upward, merging into the crimson clouds. The air burned cold. Gravity bent inward, pulling dust and metal alike toward the heart of the storm where the stranger stood. To the demons, he was no mortal enemy. He was an anomaly that offended the very logic of the warp. To the Imperium, he was a flicker of the Emperor's impossible will. To himself, he was just tired. The first demon charged, a hulking creature of brass and screaming faces. Its body wrapped in chains, made of the souls it had devoured. Its footsteps cracked the crust of the world. It swung its cleaver down in an arc that would have split a baneblade in two. The man caught the blade in one hand. There was no struggle. The demon's weight meant nothing to him. He looked at it the way one might look at a stubborn insect, sighed, and pushed back. The force of that gesture created a shockwave that split the battlefield open for miles. The demon vanished, not as matter or spirit, but as a forgotten dream. The others hesitated. It was rare for the warp to feel fear, but it did. The demons recoiled, their collective essence rippling in confusion. Every psychic creature present screamed, not in rage but in disbelief. This man emitted no soul light, no psychic aura, no resonance in the immaterium. He existed outside the very language of chaos. He was untouchable. Erathis, from his orbital vantage, was beyond comprehension. "His presence is not absence," he whispered through static. "It is negation." He doesn't resist the warp, he denies it. His mechanical fingers clenched over the data. A man without warp signature erases warp-born entities by. Existing on the planet's surface, the stranger advanced. Each step he took left ripples in the air, small distortions that unraveled the demons before they could reach him. Some tried to attack through sorcery spells of pure uncreation, but their energies shattered against him like glass on stone. He moved faster than sight, yet every motion seemed effortless, as if the world itself adjusted to accommodate him. Then the greater ones came, names that mortals dared not speak. Wings like storm fronts, bodies stitched from madness, laughter that bent gravity. The stranger met them all the same way with weary patience. Fists cutting through lies made flesh. His punches had no anger, only necessity. Each blow tore through the illusion of infinity until nothing remained but dust and quiet. The custodian in orbit watched in silence, his gauntleted hands tightening on the console rail. "He has no faith," he said finally, "and yet he conquers what faith cannot." Erathus turned his optical sensors toward him. "Faith, perhaps, is irrelevant." "No," the custodian replied, his voice low, grave. "Faith is everything. Without it, power is just hunger." Below them, the stranger stood among the remnants of unreality, surrounded by silence so absolute it frightened even the machines. He stared upward, watching the tear in the sky close upon itself like a cauterized wound. The colors faded. The air grew still. "Good," he murmured. "That's enough." But as he turned away, the ground began to pulse beneath his feet, not with chaos, but with something deeper, older, and infinitely more human. The world itself was starting to believe in him. The world itself began to hum. The fabric of desolation exceeds rock. Its metal, its buried machines vibrated in resonance with something unseen. The air shimmered as if the planet had become aware of its own heartbeat. The stranger stood at the center of it all, surrounded by ruins that had forgotten what peace felt like. He exhaled softly, his breath fogging in the chill wind, though the temperature had long ceased to obey reason. The demons were gone, yet the warp did not retreat. It lingered, restless, like a wounded beast watching its hunter from the shadows. Then came the second wave, not of flesh, but of perception. The world bent around him. Buildings folded in on themselves, reforming into impossible geometry. The ruins of the manufactorum rearranged into spirals that defied Euclidean truth. The sky bled backward. What stepped through was not a creature, but an idea, manifestation of the warp's raw defiance. A thing that was not meant to be, and yet was. It wore the faces of those he'd saved, their voices whispering through the air. "You cannot exist here. You are wrong." He paused, expression unreadable. "You're not the first to say that." The entity swelled, absorbing every color until only gray remained. The ground beneath him liquefied into mirrored light, reflecting infinite versions of himself. For the first time, the man's eyes narrowed, not in fear, but in focus. "Fine," he murmured. "Let's see which one's real." He stepped forward and punched. There was no impact, just the unraveling of definition. The mirror world shattered like a dream interrupted. Sound reversed, light folded, and existence blinked. When it stabilized again, the planet's core itself had pulsed once. The reflection, the illusion, the voice all gone dot in orbit. The custodian guard staggered as his ship's gravity reversed for a fraction of a second. He broke the planet's harmonic field, the tech adept cried, her eyes wide. "The machine spirits are praying." "Praying to what?" the custodian asked. To him, the words hung heavy. Even the mechanicus aboard Canticle of Iron fell silent. For the first time in recorded memory, the binary cant of machines had shifted not toward the omniscient, but toward an unknown variable below. The stranger lowered his hand. The silence that followed was total, deeper than the void. He looked around as if realizing the absurdity of what he'd done. "I guess that worked," he said softly, then frowned at the empty horizon. Still no grocery store though. From the north came movement imperial banners, gold and white against the ash. A landing craft descended, engines roaring like the voices of angels. The stranger turned to face it, his expression calm but weary. The ramp fell, and from within strode figures of living gold. The Adeptus Custodes had arrived. Each step they took seemed to make the ground bow in reverence. Their armor shimmered with the reflection of the dying sun, their eyes sharp with the authority of terror itself. At their head walked a warrior whose presence eclipsed the rest captain Illyrian voice of the throne. His gaze fixed on the bald man in yellow, and for the first time in centuries, even a custodian hesitated. "So," Illyrian said, his voice steady as thunder, "you are the one who bends the warp by will alone." The man tilted his head, thoughtful. "I don't really bend anything. I just hit stuff." For a heartbeat, the two stared at one another, the pinnacle of mankind's divine guardianship. And a man who had never cared for divinity at all. The storm began again. Silent and unseen, this time not from the warp but from faith. The moment the Custodes stepped onto Desolation X, the entire world seemed to still. The air itself obeyed them. Even the wind hesitated as golden armor met the ash. Captain Illyrian led the formation with the composure of one born from perfection. Every motion was silent, deliberate, and sacred. Behind him marched 6 custodians silent as statues, their halberds glowing faintly beneath the fractured sky. Before them stood the anomaly, a lone man with an expression caught somewhere between confusion and mild annoyance, his yellow cape stirring faintly in the dust. "You stand before the hand of the Emperor," Illyrian said, his voice like a verdict. "State your name." The man blinked. "Saitama." The custodians exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable behind their helms. "Saitama, of what order?" Illyrian pressed. He shrugged. "Of none, I guess." That answer fell like a heresy into the still air. The custodians' armor hummed with restrained wrath. They had faced primarchs, demons, and traitors, but never had they faced something that refused to define itself. Illyrian took a step closer. "You destroyed demons. You altered the warp. You unmade reality itself. That is power reserved for gods or the Emperor alone." "I'm not a god," Saitama replied simply. "Just a guy." The captain's eyes narrowed. "A man who destroys demons with his hands is no mere man." Saitama sighed, scratching his head. "Look, I just wanted to go home. I don't know where I am, and you people keep showing up like it's some big deal." For the first time in his long existence, Illyrian felt the faintest sting of doubt. He had been shaped to see heresy in all things that strayed from the Emperor's light. But what he saw before him was not heresy, was absence. No warp signature, no psychic echo, no divine resonance. Just an emptiness so complete it terrified him. Iratha's voice crackled over the custodian's vox. "Captain, I must insist containment is impossible. His existence rejects measurement. Do not provoke him. Containment." Saitama repeated, frowning slightly. "You really don't give up, do you, old metal guy?" Illyrian's hand hovered near his guardian's spear. The custodians behind him readied their weapons, not from aggression but instinct. The man before them felt wrong to calm, to human, to free. "If you will not submit," Alarion declared, "then by the Emperor's command, we will test the truth of you." Saitama looked almost disappointed. "You really don't have to." The captain moved faster than light itself, his weapon cutting a golden arc through the air. The strike could have severed a god. The shockwave turned sand to glass. But Saitama raised one hand and caught the blade between two fingers. There was no clash, no struggle, just stillness. The custodies froze, their machine spirit-enhanced senses screaming contradiction. Alarion tried to pull back, but couldn't. The man held the weapon as though it were made of paper. Then, with a faint sigh, Saitama released it. "You guys are strong," he said softly, "but you're fighting the wrong enemy." The custodies took a step back. No insult, no mockery, just truth, somewhere far away, deep within the golden halls of the imperial palace. The emperor's ancient form stirred upon the golden throne. Servitors screamed and fell silent as a pulse of psychic resonance rippled outward, faint but undeniable dot. And in that breathless moment, the Astronomicon flickered. Across the galaxy, the Astronomicon trembled. The light that guided the Imperium's fleets flickered, dimmed and flared again brighter, purer for one impossible instant. Astropaths screamed in their sleep, whispering of a presence not divine yet somehow closer than divinity. On Terra, the custodies stationed near the golden throne froze mid-step as the air thickened with psychic pressure. The Emperor silent for 10,000 years had shifted, if only by a fraction of thought. No words, no voice. Just awareness, dot on desolation. Captain Alarion felt it too. His armor's spirit shuddered as his link to the throne deepened. He fell to one knee, gasping within the confines of his helm. Every custodian bowed by reflex, their instincts honed through millennia of devotion. Saitama watched, puzzled, hands in his pockets. "You all okay?" he asked, glancing between the kneeling figures. "You look like you saw a ghost." "The Emperor sees you," Alarion said, his voice shaking not in fear, but reverence. "He looks through the veil, and you remain unseen. What are you?" Saitama tilted his head. "I told you. Just a guy, lies," the custodian spat, rising to his feet. "No mortal hides from the Emperor's gaze." "Maybe he blinked," Saitama offered. The absurdity of the remark was blasphemy. Yet it struck the custodies, not as insult, but as something stranger humility. This being, who had erased demons and silenced the warp, was incapable of arrogance. That was what unnerved them most. Power without ego, might without hunger, perfection without belief. Above, the skies shifted again. The warp storms that had plagued Desolation X for decades were collapsing, sucked inward into a single point of light high above the planet. Irathas stared from his vessel, mechanical hands shaking. "The Astronomicon is converging," he whispered. "No, it's aligning." His mind reeled through equations, faith, and heresy all at once. Could the Emperor's signal be looking back? Within the Imperium's psychic heart, on the golden throne, the Emperor's soul stirred like a dying sun remembering warmth. A flicker of humanity surfaced beneath the endless weight of godhood. For a heartbeat, he saw not a weapon, not a servant, not a worshipper, just a man standing alone in the ashes, content with his own strength. And for that infinitesimal instant, the master of mankind almost smiled. On the surface, Alarion lowered his gaze. "The throne responds," he murmured. His voice was raw, uncertain. Could it be that he sees in you something forgotten? Look, I don't know this emperor guy, Saitama said, rubbing his neck. But if he's the one keeping everyone alive, maybe he should get some rest. Erathas's voice crackled through the vox, brittle and terrified. Do not speak of the emperor in jest. Saitama sighed. You people really need to relax. The custodies stood motionless. The light above them was fading again, returning to its distant pulse. Yet something had changed. The warp was quieter now, its chaos softened, almost curious. Reality itself seemed to lean in, listening. Alarion deactivated his weapon, the golden blade dimming. Perhaps you are not heresy, he said at last. Perhaps you are. Reminder of what? Saitama asked. That even gods began as men, Alarion replied. The stranger didn't answer. He looked skyward, toward the fading light of the astral. And for the first time since arriving in this universe, he smiled not out of pride, but because something, somewhere, had understood him. The wind shifted. The silence deepened, and the Emperor dreamed again. The echo of that moment, when the Astronomicon had flared and the warp had still spread across the stars like a pulse from a sleeping god. It touched the void ships of the Astra Militarum, where soldiers wept without knowing why. It passed through the Libraria of the Adeptus Astartes, where space marines felt their gene seed quiver as if hearing the heartbeat of an ancestor. It rippled through the black fortresses of the Inquisition. And even there, amid suspicion and fear, someone whispered, he dreams. On Desolation 9, the air had turned serene. The storm was gone, replaced by a golden stillness that stretched to every horizon. The ground no longer bled ash, and the machine spirits in their rusted husks hummed faintly in approval. For the first time since the planet's naming, there was peace. Saitama stood at the center of it, squinting against the sunlight breaking through the clouds. It wasn't much, just faint warmth brushing against his face, but it made him pause. Finally, he said softly, a normal day. Captain Alarion approached, his armor glinting like fire in the newborn light. Every custodian behind him knelt, not in worship, but in understanding. If this is your doing, he said, then you have undone what even faith could not. Saitama turned, confused. I didn't do anything. The monsters showed up. I punched them. That's it. That was enough, Alarion replied. His tone had softened from divine authority to something almost human. You reminded us of something the Imperium forgot: simplicity. The Magos's voice hissed from a descending lander. Erathas emerged, scorched and limping, his augmentics crackling with strain. This cannot be simplicity, he rasped. You have bent creation to your will, defied entropy, silenced the warp. You have performed miracles without invocation. Saitama shrugged. I just trained a lot. The Magos's lenses flickered erratically. No training grants the ability to erase demons. Maybe you're just not doing it right. For a moment, there was only silence, and then, impossibly, Erathas laughed. A strange, metallic laugh, raw and fractured, but genuine. The skittery around him faltered in disbelief. The Mogos, who had lived for centuries without emotion, was laughing. By the Omnissiah, he said through static, perhaps ignorance is the highest truth. Alarion turned his gaze toward the sky. And what of the Emperor? He asked. Does he still dream, or did this man wake him? Far above, unseen by any mortal eye, the Emperor's consciousness drifted through the labyrinth of his own making. In that endless silence where souls were fuel and gods were machinery, something fragile stirred a memory. He remembered walking among men, not as deity but as guardian. He remembered laughter and warmth and humanity before it became legend. He saw this bald wanderer from another world and recognized in him not a rival, but an echo of what humanity had once been. On the surface, Saitama sighed and looked at the horizon. So, I guess I just wait here until someone figures out how to send me back. Alarion bowed his head. If such a place exists, then perhaps the Emperor himself will open the way. You have done what even saints could not. Saitama scratched his cheek. I didn't mean to do anything big, just did what felt right. The custodian smiled beneath his helm. That, he said quietly, is why it was enough. Above them, the golden light faded into the quiet of a new dawn. Somewhere within the darkness of the imperial palace, a single human breath echoed through the machinery of eternity and, for the first time in 10,000 years, the Emperor dreamed not of war, but of peace.